Welcome to Your City Connections, where you get to meet entertaining and informative guests. Guests such as an artist with a brush or with a camera, and a guest with a violin. City Connections, providing insightful interviews with favorite son Lieutenant Governor Todd Lamb, to city commissioners, the mayor, interviews with a rodeo queen, to beauty queen, and even an NBA player. Now, join Steve Kime as he discusses another engaging topic on City Connections.
Hello again and welcome to City Connections. As you know, I have the opportunity really each and every week to interview someone that has a connection to the city of Enid, but also we get the opportunity to talk about their impact on the community and the work that they're doing and how they give back to the community. Well, my guest today on City Connections was named the sports director for Chisholm Trail Broadcasting back in 2015. However, he first joined the station as the news director back in 2011. And my guest was named in 2014 the Non-Metro Radio Personality of the Year by the Oklahoma Association of Broadcasters. So please welcome to the ETN studios, John Herrick. John, welcome to ETN.
Steve, good to see you.
Good to have you on TV. The roles kind of reverse. I remember the days I would come to your stomping grounds, the studio,
Right.
and we would talk city government a little bit, but now we have you here at the studio, so thanks for joining us today. For those of you that you've heard of a particular station, I'd like to remind everybody that the network of stations, and John, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think I'm right, the network of stations for Chisholm Trail Broadcasting is KNID. Now, is that FM?
That's FM, correct.
Okay.
107.1.
And then the AM station is KCRC.
1390.
And then you have the other FM, which is KXLS.
95.7 FM.
Okay.
Correct. Yep.
So I didn't have the numbers on the dial. John does. Great. Well, as sports director of Chisholm Trail Broadcasting, let's go back to the beginning, John. Mm-hmm. How in the world did you get started in this?
Well, when I was a young kid, I really had a passion for sports, and I guess it kind of started when I was 6 years old. I really loved the NBA, and I grew up watching the Indiana Pacers. I'm from Indiana, and they had a really good run there in the 90s when they had Reggie Miller and Mark Jackson and Rick Smits and all those guys. So I really grew up to love basketball, and Indiana is a state known for basketball. So I got in trouble one time in first grade, and my mom wouldn't let me watch Game 7, I think, of the NBA Eastern Conference Finals or something.
My.
And
now
so
that's punishment.
It was. For me, that was huge punishment. That's a huge thing right there. And I just said, well, Mom, if you're not going to let me watch the game, I'll tell you how it would sound. So I grabbed her hairbrush and pretended to be like Marv Albert or someone like that who was calling the game at the time. And, and so it kind of started there. And then I went to DePauw University, and they were like, well, if you have an interest in joining our, radio station here, you can. It's free. You can just come and go as you please, get involved. There's no pressure. So I came in and just did a few sportscasts, and the first sportscast I did the sports next to a really beautiful young sorority girl from Alpha Phi who was doing the news, and she said, wow, you're really good at this. Have you done this before? I said, no, it's my first time. I was a freshman in college, and that kind of gave me the confidence, and then one thing kind of steamrolled into the next, and I ended up calling the DePauw Women's Basketball National Championship when I was a freshman, which was a great opportunity that opened up. It was really amazing, and it kind of started from there, and then I got my first radio job out of college in a small town in Montana. I was doing everything there, news, weather, sports, and this position opened up, which allowed me to do even more sports than I was doing there, so it was too hard to turn down. Even as the news director, I was calling a lot of games starting in 2011, so it's just been one great thing after the next.
Well, I appreciate you mentioning the opportunity you had in Montana, that you did everything, because we're a generation or so apart from our broadcasting lives, and in my world. And when I worked in stations, you did everything.
You had to, yeah.
You did everything. You may open the door, you may fix coffee, but you're going to be doing the news, and you may be doing all kinds of spots. At the same time, you got to interview the governor later that afternoon.
That's right, yeah.
And so it was a great experience because you really did everything but sales, if you will. I remember back in the good old days, John, as in high school for me, I would get in my 60 Chevy. I'd go out and tell my mom, said, Mom, I'm going to go listen to the radio. So I'd go get in my car, just sit in the driveway, and this is late at night, and I'd turn on that AM radio in my car, and I'd listen to WLS Chicago, WNOE out of New Orleans, and WOAI out of San Antonio. And my car radio picked up. Of course, those were 50,000 watt stations that just could really boom a signal. But I remember listening to those guys, and I was just fascinated by their voice, their information. It seemed like they knew everything about the artist. And of course, I really enjoyed the music. That was kind of an influence on me to investigate more into what this broadcasting stuff is all about.
Yep.
Were there personalities, we say radio personalities, were there individuals in broadcasting that kind of influenced you and said, besides the young lady said, you know, John, you ought to really continue this.
Yeah.
But what are some mentors, if you will, that just really encourage you to keep going?
Well, I have a pretty long list, to be honest with you. It started with my faculty advisor in college. His name is Jeff McCall. He's still there. I keep in touch with him. I'll ask him for advice every now and then, and he gives me great advice. He always is there to help me out. The two people I did internships with at ESPN Radio in Indianapolis, 1070 The Fan, the executive producer there hired me on as an intern. I still keep in touch with him, and he's the public address announcer for the Indiana Pacers now. He was a big help to me. He gave me some constructive criticism and feedback when I needed it. And then at my second internship, WTHR TV in Indianapolis, I did one in TV too. The sports director there, Dave Calabro, who's an Emmy-winning sportscaster, was a great influence on me and a big help. So was Rich Nye and Henry Wolford, some of those other guys that were there too. And then just growing up and listening to the Colts, Pacers, and Hoosiers on the radio, Don Fisher, the voice of IU, Bob Lamey, the voice of the Colts, and Mark Boyle, the voice of the Indiana Pacers. That's where I really learned what really good play-by-play is all about, because those guys are some of the best, and not just in Indiana, but in the entire business.
When you listen to a ball game, do you catch yourself really listening to that play-by-play? I caught myself the other evening. I was listening to the Thunder game, and I was listening to the gentleman that was calling the play-by-play of the Thunder game. I think it was at Chesapeake, and I was just so impressed with his smoothness. Mm-hmm. He had you at the game. He didn't get overexcited, but I got caught up into listening to his techniques more than I was listening to the score. Do you find yourself doing that?
Yeah, I do, and that's Matt Pinto. He's excellent, and he. What amazes me about Matt is Matt can do it in a way where he can weave a whole bunch of information into a broadcast, but it's not like he's cramming it down your throat. It's like he's doing it in a very professional way, and I'm really impressed by that. And I do listen to some guys, like when I drive out of Enid and I'm not in our listening area anymore, I'll switch to different games on the satellite radio and like, oh wow, I don't know who this guy is, but he does a heck of a job and says score and time and all that, keeps you really in touch with the game.
Well, I caught myself the other evening listening to the ball game, but I was more listening to the technique of the guy than I was the game. Our special guest today on City Connections is John Herrick. John is the sports director for Chisholm Trail Broadcasting here in Enid. John, you mentioned the step from Montana to Enid, Oklahoma. How does that happen? Because someone who's watching the program today, they say, well, maybe you just show up and get a job. Well, there's a little bit more to that. And kind of tell us how individuals move from station to station.
Well, first of all, you have to be happy where you are, and you have to really ask yourself, do I really see myself being here a whole lot longer? And I kind of saw the writing on the wall at the station in Montana. The sports director there was going to be there for a long time. He had a lockdown on all the games that was already there, and I just realized I kind of wanted, I wanted more. I did a lot of sports in college. That was where my true passion was. I didn't want to just let it go and just do news and weather all the time. So I saw this job open on a very helpful sportscasting job website. And there's lots of them out there to use. So young people, feel free to browse them, because the one I use is staatalent.com, and our station uses that to recruit new broadcasters like they did with me. And so when that happened, I saw it was open, and then they had already hired someone, and I was like, oh well, job's closed now. I'm sure they found someone. Well, that guy got a promotion from his old job back in Florida, so he drove back and left Enid. The job was open again. I applied for it, and it was meant to be. So it's just funny how things work out in life sometimes.
Sports coverage is synonymous with Chisholm Trail Broadcasting, and why is that the case? Many of the stations they have their forte. they're known for oldies and goldies or sports or news, whatever, but sports is a big part of Chisholm Trail Broadcasting, so I know that's attraction to you, but why is Chisholm Trail Broadcasting focused on sports?
You know, it's just been a part of the fabric of the history of this place for a long time. I mean, when Chad McKee he really, you know, now you probably see Chad on Sooner Sports Television all the time now. He really kind of got the ball rolling, and he started doing a ton of games out at the Skelter Conference Tournament, Cherokee Strip Tournament, and so then our station and everybody in the town was like, why don't you just do every game? You're already there, do every game. And so then that led into doing every game of those tournaments, and then we end up doing more down the road to the Gold Ball on high school, you know, basketball coverage, and that's been a great thing, and the fans have eaten it up. The sponsors love it. They love hearing kids in their local towns and communities get involved with it. So it's just been one thing after the other, and the stations just realize the value of it, and that's why we rely on it so much.
Individuals that are watching our show on City Connection say, yeah, I'm familiar with John, and he does a lot of the Enid ball games, but you guys are really involved throughout the area. Mm-hmm. Can you just kind of list a few of the schools that you guys have a relationship with, that you're doing their ball games?
It's well, obviously Enid High. We do their football and baseball, and then it's anywhere from Garber, Covington Douglas, O'Keene, Fairview. I don't even want to leave anybody out because I'm sure I might on accident. Sure. Ringwood, Cherokee, is in our listening area. There's a lot of really, the Lomega. They know Lomega girls are always known for having a great basketball run. Burlington really appreciates our high school sports coverage. So it just goes on and on, really, throughout Northwest Oklahoma. Not necessarily with our AM station, but our 2 FMs can reach really far outside of Enid, and that really makes a difference.
Well, besides sports, Chisholm Trail Broadcasting is known for a couple other events, and we're going to take a short break, and we'll talk to John and ask him about a little bit more about these events, and also he's going to give you some pointers, if you will, or suggestions about broadcasting, and that's all coming up right after this break. We'll be right back. Thank you for staying with us on City Connections. I'm Steve Kime, and my special guest today is John Herrick. You probably see John running from ball game to ball game, but you probably hear him more than you see him, because if you see him, he's probably trying to get to an event, but chances are you hear him with a lot of the play-by-play of the sports that he does for Chisholm Trail Broadcasting. Now, I understand that there's the Sportsman, the outdoors. Is it the Sportsman Outdoor Expo? Is that the term?
The full name of it is the KNID Sportsman's and Outdoor Expo.
Okay.
Yep.
And then there's AgriFest. Those are a couple of events that I'm familiar with Chisholm Trail Broadcasting. Mm-hmm. What are some other things? Because we're talking about really Chisholm Trail Broadcasting's involvement in the Enid community, with your involvement and how you give back, and also Chisholm Trail. What's some other events?
Well, AgriFest is a great event. It makes us, at least $300,000 with all the vendors that we have out there that come to it. It's always a really neat event, and all the vendors really appreciate it. The Sportsman and Outdoor Expo is one where we have like fetch and fish promotions, where a guy will come and throw a treat into the pool, and his dog will go and retrieve it. It's really neat. It's a really neat thing. And then there's a whole bunch of just other great vendors that come out to the outdoor show that also come to AgriFest. And then, there's the Filler Up Blood Drive that we do in July. That's a great way to give back to the community, emphasize the importance of the Oklahoma Blood Institute and what they do for the community, making sure they bring, get blood donors to give to people who really need it. We always do a big part of that. Got to give a lot of credit there to Tom Nelson, who does a lot of work with that. Customer appreciation, teacher appreciation 2 times of the year, where we give back to, we do a nice little event where the sponsors come and sponsor, our coverage of teacher appreciation, and then teachers get nominated, and then whoever has the most nominations is named, Teacher of the Year from Chisholm Trail Broadcasting. And then customer appreciation, which is a way for the businesses to give back to the customers by showing how much they appreciate their business. That's in April, and then in May is Teacher Appreciation Month. Also, we've kind of got back into our March Madness promotion, which I personally love. It's called Hoops Hysteria, and it's out at Pheasant Run Golf Course in March, right when the bracket comes out for the NCAA tournament. We have people come out to the golf course, and if they're interested, they choose we call their name, and then they come and they pick out the team. You don't want to get a 16 or a 15 seed, or you're in big trouble. And they ride that team throughout the tournament, and if their team wins the national championship, they win a really cool grand prize. We've given away TVs, we've given away big Traeger grills before, and I think we're coming up with a really big prize this year that's a little bit different, like a stereo system or something. I don't know, but we always give away a really big prize at that event, and Pheasant Run Golf Course gets packed because people love that. So those are just some of the few events that we do outside of AgriFest and the Outdoor Expo.
Let's talk a little bit more about the broadcasting career. Think back of if you had one or two, just significant wow moments for you, what would they be? One or two?
Well, you mentioned it at the open of the show. Winning the Non-Metro Radio Personality of the Year award was really incredible last year. I honestly did not think that I was going to win that, especially going up against Alan Klepper over at KOFM, who's won it multiple times. Sure. That was pretty incredible to have your name called off, and then you go up and then you have to give a speech, which was really neat. The MC that night at the banquet was kind of cracking jokes and ribbing everybody, like kind of making playful fun at everyone. And he didn't do that. He said, "Oh man, this guy's got a better voice than I do." And I was like, wow, the guy that's been ripping everybody all night's going to give a compliment? So that was a pretty wow moment for me. This year I won Best Play-by-Play, and that'll be on April 1st, and I'll get honored with that award. My dad will be at the banquet, so it'll be nice to have one of my family members flying out from Indiana to be there for that. That'll be really cool. And then, I think back to college, getting to interview Brad Stevens right before the national, when they went to the Final Four. Butler was not supposed to make that run. That was in 2010 when he was coaching Butler, way before he went to the NBA. That was really neat because he was very open and honest with me about everything, and he was a DePauw grad like me, so getting to talk to him was really cool. And then freshman year, when I called the national championship, that was very overwhelming at times because I was like, wow, that was the first big thing that I did. And then, of course, just getting to do the numerous state championship games that I've done for basketball and football and stuff has been really special as well.
Where is the radio industry going to? With the technological advances, it's just incredible how much less equipment you need nowadays
right.
to be on air. There seems to be this trend of live streaming of radio stations, right. So you can either on the website, you can watch your radio personalities, whatever. Where do you think broadcasting is going?
Well, it's definitely going more, I would say, towards your computer. It's so easy to listen now on the computer with your, with your computer listening on the internet. That's a huge way to do it now. And then also, on your phone, there's this really amazing app out there called the TuneIn Radio app, and it's completely free, and you can just download it, search a station that you want, and then you can, there it is, right there for you, and it's free. It's amazing, and a lot of stuff you can do on your phone with the broadcast. And I think that's kind of where it's headed, but especially in the talk show medium. Everybody kind of wants to know, what's it like to be in a studio with a talk show host? So now cameras are following the radio talk show host around while he's doing his show, and that's kind of been the trend over the last 5 years. So I don't know, maybe on Wednesday night when I host my Wednesday night sports talk show from Wings to Go, you may see a camera there sometime. So I don't know. That's kind of where things are going, especially in the talk show form.
Interesting. Well, John, I certainly appreciate your openness and just sharing these bits of jewels with us in regard to your broadcasting career and the people that you've met. And when you were referring to the one coach before he went to the Pacers, he was at Indiana?
Yeah, that's right.
Before he went. Isn't it refreshing when you interview a coach or just any individual? They're so accessible. They're just so gracious. They have all the time in the world, and you're the most important person in the building when you're talking to them. And I remember those interviews, if you will, of how refreshing it is to meet those individuals. And I'm sure that's the impact that Coach had on you. Yeah. And with that in mind, for an individual who's watching the show today, John, and even later on YouTube, they may be thinking, you know, John said something that really spoke to my heart about this broadcasting. Well, what words of encouragement would you give them, someone who's watching the program? They may be, you know, very, very young, and they're thinking, I need to explore this, but I don't know how to begin. What would you offer of encouragement?
Well, the first thing you got to have, and I heard this from Dave Hunziker, the radio voice of Oklahoma State. He told me, he goes, you got to have, one thing you got to have is a curious mind. You got to have a curious mind. You got to really be into what you're covering, whether it's news, sports, or weather, whatever it may be. And you've got to try to find a way to go out there and pursue what makes you curious. And if you really enjoy doing sports, then you got to research it. You got to be a part of it. You got to want to do it. Read soak it all up on the web, on any website you can get, and then you know, talk to people in the profession that have done it, and also be willing to understand that when you start your career, you're not going to necessarily make a lot of money right off the bat. You're going to have to pay your dues and do some internships and do some work that may not be paid. You may not be paid to do that. I did 2 unpaid internships that were short on money, but extremely valuable in experience, because I got to interview some great people, including standing 3 feet away from Peyton Manning at Indianapolis Colts training camp. So you need to understand that, you know, if you pay your dues in this business, things will work out well for you. But it's definitely one where deferred gratification is an important thing to understand.
And I think that's an important message or bits of wisdom that you've shared, is that you just don't walk into the top level opportunity.
No.
And if you see the people on TV or radio today, and even ones that are no longer in broadcasting, they spent 10, 20, 30 years
Right.
to be successful to that point, you know.
Yeah.
They spent a lot of time and effort.
And
But
I'm sure there were a lot of sleepless nights and a lot of hours that they put in, no doubt about
Well,
it.
John, thank you for being here today.
Thanks a lot, Steve. I appreciate it.
And we'll give you the 25-cent tour of our ETN studio.
Awesome.
It'll
Awesome.
take us every bit of a minute to go to it, but we appreciate you being here today.
Okay. Thank you.
And we thank you for being with us on City Connections today. And again, my special guest is the sports director of Chisholm Trail Broadcasting. And also, I want to get this right, John was the 2014 Non-Metro Radio Personality of the Year. And of course, that award was presented by the Oklahoma Association of Broadcasters. And he just shared with me, which I didn't know, that he was the Sportscaster of the Year for the same category. Is that right?
Well, best play-by-play. So yeah,
okay.
So they honor like play-by-play, newscast, and sportscast, and I got play-by-play this year, so it was pretty cool.
Well, I was giving him more accolades.
Well,
than
I
him,
appreciate
so.
it. Any and all.
So
are great.
anyway, it's still significant, and congratulations.
Thanks a lot,
That's great. Thank you for being with us on City Connections, and I look forward to seeing you next week when we have another significant and really unique guest that has a connection to Enid that helps make this a great community. Until next time, make it a great day.